He dropped to one knee during her father-daughter dance. Right there, right in the middle of the floor, under the warm shimmer of fairy lights and the soft hum of a string quartet, my little brother Todd, wearing a boutonniere he didn't earn, pulled out a velvet box like he was the headliner, not a guest. I watched it all from the corner of the reception hall, frozen mid-sip, champagne glass trembling just enough for the bubbles to catch the light like tiny bursts of rage. That moment cracked something inside me. Not just frustration. Not even betrayal. It was something older, colder, a slow simmering frost I'd been storing in my gut since childhood. People gasped. Chairs scraped against polished wood. Phones came out, snapping photos, filming videos. And Lucy, of course, gasped loudest of all. I couldn't see Michelle's face in that instant, but I didn't have to. I knew I'd see that look, confused, then hurt, then trying to stay composed because her father was still holding her hand. And I knew then, the plan was greenlit. But let me rewind, because this story doesn't start with a ruined wedding. It starts with a receipt. One small slip of paper, folded in half and nearly forgotten in the corner of my brother's jacket pocket, jacket he tossed carelessly over a chair in the Airbnb 2 nights before the ceremony. My best friend Jim noticed it first, and if he hadn't, none of this would have happened the way it did. Maybe we would have gotten through the weekend with nothing more than mild discomfort and forced smiles. Maybe. But when Jim read that receipt, Tiffany's, classic engagement ring, platinum band, his eyes darted up to me like he'd seen a ghost with my brother's face. I still remember the way he pulled me aside, his voice barely above a whisper but sharp enough to cut through the noise of rehearsal chatter. "He's gonna do it," Jim said. "He's gonna pull a Todd. Now, you don't know what that means, but I do. Abby does too. Pulling a Todd means making your moment his moment. Birthday? He shows up with life-altering news. Graduation? Suddenly he's having a panic attack in the front row. Baby shower? Oh yeah, Lucy's pregnancy announcement, complete with a slideshow on her phone that she accidentally airplayed to the living room TV. Always staged, always rehearsed, always with a humble little shrug like, who, me? But this? This was supposed to be sacred. Michelle and I had gone back and forth about having a big wedding at all. I'd argued for eloping. Something quiet, something far. Just her and me. But she wanted the moment, wanted her father to walk her down the aisle, wanted her cousins and college friends dancing in the garden under strings of soft white lights. So I said yes, and we planned, and we poured ourselves into every detail like it might save us from regret. And then came the receipt. So yeah, I confronted Todd. Pulled him aside in the hallway, the one with ugly green carpet that always smelled faintly like dust and hairspray. I didn't yell. I didn't even raise my voice. Just looked him in the eye and said, "You're not doing it at my wedding." And the smirk, God, the smirk he gave me was like a punch in the chest. I wasn't planning on anything, he said, all hurt and innocence, like a little boy being accused of drawing on the walls. But he was. I saw it. I felt it. So I cut him from the groomsmen lineup. Flat out. Didn't ask, didn't explain to anyone except Jim and Abby, who just nodded like she'd been waiting for it. Todd ran crying to our parents. That's not dramatic, he literally cried. Sat in the backseat of my mom's SUV while she stroked his hair and told me I was being unforgiving. Dad called me later that night, voice low and tired. Said things like, "He just wants to celebrate love, can't you let it go?" I told him I wasn't gambling Michelle's memory of our wedding just to coddle their golden boy one more time. Still, they wouldn't hear it. He didn't say he was going to propose, my mom insisted, like that mattered. Like we hadn't lived our whole lives around the gravitational pull of Todd's ego. Eventually, after hours of calls and one very tense dinner, they got Todd to promise he wouldn't try anything. He even shook my hand, looking like someone had told him he couldn't have dessert. But I didn't believe him. And neither did Jim. So we made a plan. Not revenge, at least, not at first. It was more like an insurance policy. Just in case. We knew someone who owed Jim a favor. A girl named Cassidy, actress type, someone who could sell the look. All we needed was a scenario. And when Todd walked out during Michelle's father-daughter dance, wearing that smug, radiant smile, I whispered to Jen, "It's go time." She cornered him 10 minutes later. Let me tell you, watching Lucy's expression curdle from excitement to confusion to full-on disgust? That's a picture I wish I could frame. Todd turned pale as a bedsheet, tried to laugh it off at first. "What? Who is this?" he stammered. But Cassidy was prepared. She had his number saved under Daddy T, and when she called it, oh, when it rang, his face broke. Lucy didn't say a word. Just pulled the ring off and dropped it into the punch bowl with a quiet splash. People stared. The music faltered. Somewhere, someone whispered, "Oh my God," like it was a slow-motion car crash. But I just sipped my champagne and smiled. Because you don't steal someone's wedding and expect a clean getaway. He followed Lucy out into the parking lot, stumbling like his legs didn't belong to him. The doors swung open behind him, letting the bass from the DJ's mix leak into the night air like a wound that wouldn't clot. I didn't go after him. I didn't need to. I knew exactly what he'd find, Lucy, standing beside her car, shaking hands trying to unlock it while her makeup streaked down her face in rivulets. I could almost hear her voice, quiet but slicing, saying something like, "How could you do this to me?" And Todd? Todd's always had a way of turning apologies into excuses. I doubted that worked this time. Back inside, everything was hollow. Michelle tried to play it cool, for a while. You could see it in the tight smile she gave the guests, the way she clapped for the next song like nothing had happened. But I caught her sitting in the dressing room a few minutes later, staring at the lace edge of her veil like it had betrayed her. "He took it from me," she whispered. "Not the dance. Not the attention. The moment. Something precious, emotional, something tied to her dad, gone." I sat next to her. Didn't say a word for a full minute. Then she reached for my hand and said, "Tell me this wasn't all a mistake." That wrecked me more than I expected. Because even though the sabotage worked, even though I won, the cost was beginning to ripple through the walls like a low-frequency hum no one wanted to acknowledge. People were whispering. My mom looked shell-shocked. My dad tried to act like nothing happened, pulling relatives into polite conversation over mini crab cakes, his smile stretched too wide. But Abby? She stood in a corner, arms crossed, eyes on me like I'd just detonated something sacred. Later, after we cut the cake, awkwardly, with no music, I found her outside near the rose bushes, lighting a citronella candle and avoiding eye contact. "You didn't have to go that far," she said. I shrugged. "You really think he wasn't going to do it?" "He did it," she said. "I'm not defending him. But you didn't expose him. You destroyed him." I wanted to laugh. Or scream. Or collapse. Instead, I just said, "He's destroyed every one of my moments since I was 6 years old." This was the only one I had left. She didn't answer that. Just blew out the candle and walked inside. The silence after the wedding was worse. Michelle and I went on our honeymoon. Beautiful island. Warm air. Cold drinks. But it all felt filtered. Like we were watching our happiness through glass. We smiled for photos. We joked about lizards sneaking into our room. But underneath it all, there was this hum, again, that same low note of tension. I knew she was holding something in. On the last night, she finally let it out. "I get why you did it," she said, legs pulled up under her on the balcony. "But I need to know, was it worth it to you? Was it worth us?" That hit like a punch to the ribs. I told her the truth. I said yes. Because watching him steal everything, year after year, and always getting away with it wore me down like tide against stone. And this time? I wanted him to feel it. I needed him to. She nodded. Quiet for a long time. Then she said, "Next time, warn me when you bring fire into the house. I don't want to get burned by accident." When we got back, the world was already halfway on fire. Lucy had tossed all of Todd's stuff into trash bags and left them on the curb. That part wasn't rumor. I got a picture from Jim, who'd driven by the apartment. Her parents had come to pick her up. She blocked Todd on everything. Full radio silence. That was when the messages started. Not from Todd, at first, at least. My mom called. Then she texted. Then she left a voicemail, sobbing. Said things like, "You've ruined your brother's life, and we raised you better than this." I didn't answer. Let every message stack up like unpaid bills. Dad tried once, said something cryptic about how family doesn't turn on each other. That was rich, considering the years Abby and I had spent as background noise to Todd's melodrama. Then Todd himself messaged. Dozens. At first it was confusion, disbelief. Then rage. Caps lock, punctuation thrown like darts. What the hell did you do? She won't talk to me. She thinks it's true. You liar. You psycho. He even sent a photo of the side of his car. Someone had spray-painted cheater on it. I don't think it was Lucy. She's not the type. But I never replied. Not until I got a single message from him that said, "You ruined the only good thing I ever had." That one made me pause. I looked at it for a long time. Not because I felt guilt. I didn't. Not even a flicker. But because, for the first time, he wasn't defending himself. He wasn't shifting blame. He was just broken. And it was strange. For a split second, I felt like I was 12 again, watching him fall off his bike and cry in the driveway. Only this time, I was the one who pushed him. I sent a single message back. No idea what you're talking about. Also, you still owe me for half the wedding. Attached is the bill. Pay me back or lose my number. That's when it all started to spiral. He didn't reply. Not to the message, not to the invoice, not to anything. Days passed. Then a week. It was quiet, but not peaceful. You know that kind of silence where something feels like it's waiting? Like the moment before a car crash, or the breath before someone tells you they're leaving? That's what it felt like. Michelle asked me one night, while brushing her teeth, "So, what happens now?" I didn't know how to answer. Because I thought it was over. I thought the punch had landed, the fallout burned through, and we were stepping out of the blast zone. But I was wrong. It started with Abby. She called me one afternoon, tight-voiced and quiet, the way people talk in hospitals or church pews. "I went to see him," she said. I didn't say anything. Just waited. "He's bad," she finally whispered. "Not just sad. Bad. Like he hasn't left the apartment in days. Curtains shut. Dishes everywhere. He smells like he hasn't showered. I think he's drinking." I bit the inside of my cheek hard enough to taste blood. And he blames you," she said, blunt. "He thinks you ruined his life, and Mom and Dad? They're not helping. They keep saying things like your brother needs support right now and family doesn't turn their backs. It's like no one remembers what he did." "Of course they don't," I said, letting the venom slip out. "Because that's the story of our lives, isn't it? Todd burns the house down, and we sweep up the ashes." Abby was quiet for a long time. Then she said something that caught me completely off guard. "I think he's coming unglued." And that was the first time I felt off. Not vindicated. Not smug. Just unsettled. Because if you'd asked me before the wedding if I wanted Todd to suffer, I'd have said no. I wanted him to be humbled. To feel consequences. But this? Abby was describing someone who wasn't even angry anymore. Someone slipping through the cracks. And that did something strange to me. Made me nervous. That night, Michelle found me sitting on the couch staring into nothing, the TV on mute. She curled up next to me, looked at my face, and asked softly, "Do you regret it?" I didn't answer right away. Because I didn't know. That's the part no one tells you about payback. It always sounds cleaner in your head. Neater. But once the dust settles and someone's unraveling in a dark apartment while your mom leaves you voicemails about forgiveness, it stops feeling like revenge. It starts feeling like rot. He ruined our wedding, I said finally, just to say something. I know, she said. But what if he never gets up from this? We didn't talk for the rest of the night. Then came the dinner. Mom invited all of us. Not to a house, not even a restaurant, but to the old family cabin. That alone was weird. We hadn't all been there together in years, not since before Dad fell through the deck trying to hang string lights and blamed the weather. So when the group text came through, just a casual family dinner at the cabin, Sunday 5 p.m., I stared at it for a solid minute before responding. Michelle said we shouldn't go. That it felt like a trap. But I was curious. Not hopeful. Not nervous. Just interested. Like someone opening a door they swore they'd never touch again, just to see what's behind it. The drive-up was quiet. The cabin's in the woods, surrounded by brittle pine trees and crooked shadows. I remember thinking it looked smaller than I remembered, like the years had pressed it down into the dirt. We were the last to arrive. Abby was already there, sitting on the porch swing like a warning sign. She didn't smile. Just nodded once, like, you asked for this. Mom greeted us with a hug that smelled like lavender oil and guilt. Dad shook my hand too hard, jaw clenched like a bear trap. And then, Todd stepped out from the kitchen. I almost didn't recognize him. He was thin. Like, hollowed out thin. His clothes hung on him. His hair was greasy, his eyes dark-ringed and watery. He smiled when he saw me, but it wasn't real. It was the kind of smile you make when your face forgets how to be human. He hugged me. That alone was strange enough. But what he said while he hugged me made my stomach turn. I forgive you. Not I'm sorry. Not let's move on. But I forgive you. I pulled back slowly, heart thudding. What did you just say? His eyes glittered. I said I forgive you. For lying. For hurting me. For ruining my relationship. I didn't respond. Didn't move. Just stared at him, and I swear, just for a second, his smile twitched into something else. Something hollow. Almost triumphant. Dinner was a fever dream. Mom made lasagna. That used to be my favorite. But that night it tasted like nothing. Everyone chewed like they were trying to convince themselves it was normal. Todd talked a lot. More than usual. About random things, video games, politics, how fast the world was moving. He laughed too loud, clapped his hands on the table too hard. And every so often, he'd glance at me. Not in anger. But like he was waiting. At one point, he leaned in, whispered across the table, "You ever feel like the walls remember what you say?" I blinked. What? He smiled. The walls. In here. I grew up in this house, remember? I think they know what happened. I think they hear things we don't. Everyone went silent. Mom tried to chuckle, brush it off. Todd, that's enough wine. But Todd just sipped his glass, eyes locked on mine. It's not wine, he said. It's remembering juice. And I knew, then and there, that something was coming. Not revenge. Not redemption. Something darker. After dinner, no one moved. The table still smelled like scorched cheese and cold red sauce, but no one dared scrape a plate or stand up. We all just sat there. Abby picked at the frayed corner of a napkin like she was trying to disappear into it. Michelle stared at her untouched glass of water. My mom clutched a rosary she hadn't mentioned in years. And Todd leaned back in his chair with a lazy grin, like a man watching the fire he started finally take shape. I'm glad we're all here, he said. Nobody answered. You know what this reminds me of? He continued, glancing around like a game show host. That Thanksgiving when the oven caught fire and Dad used the fire extinguisher backwards? Dad's jaw ticked. Todd. What? I'm just saying, this cabin's seen some memories. His voice lifted on that last word, like it meant more than it should. I couldn't take it anymore. I pushed back from the table and stood. I think we're done here. But Todd just looked up at me. Calm. Almost smug. Funny. I was gonna say the same thing. And that's when he did it. He reached under the table and pulled out a small notebook, weathered leather cover, rubber band wrapped around the middle like a tourniquet. Tossed it down with a soft thud that sounded way louder than it should have. Everyone stared at it. Michelle was the first to speak. What is that? Todd tilted his head. A record. Of things. Things people don't think I notice. Things people say when they think I'm too busy being the screw-up. I didn't like where this was going. Abby sat up straighter. Todd, what's in that book? He didn't answer. Just peeled the rubber band off and opened to a marked page. Started reading. August 2nd, 2019, he's like a parasite. He only shows up when there's something to take. Abby, on the phone with Mom. Abby's mouth dropped open. You were listening in on my calls? He didn't stop. October 13th, 2020, he's going to ruin everything, just watch. Jim, to Michelle, outside a rehearsal dinner. Michelle paled. I stepped toward him. What is this supposed to prove? He met my eyes, calm now, almost robotic. It proves that none of you ever loved me. You just tolerated me. And then pretended like you didn't know where the rot came from. No one said we didn't love you, Mom cut in, but it was brittle. Thin. Todd closed the notebook slowly. You loved a version of me that never existed. One that wasn't inconvenient. One that didn't need attention. You built your whole lives around pretending I was a mistake. He stood. I just made sure you couldn't ignore it anymore. And with that, he walked outside, into the trees. Just gone. We didn't follow him right away. There was something in the way he said it, something final, like a door slamming shut behind him. And part of me didn't want to open it again. Michelle whispered, he's not okay. I nodded. But I couldn't stop looking at that notebook. Still sitting on the table like a landmine no one had stepped on yet. Eventually, Dad stood. I'll go get him. He stepped out into the dark, but 5 minutes passed. Then 10. The trees outside started to feel like teeth. Finally, Abby and I went after them. The woods behind the cabin aren't big, but they feel endless at night. We called their names. Heard nothing. Then, a voice. Not close. Not far. Todd. Singing. Low, slow. An old lullaby Mom used to hum when we were kids. Something about a fox and a cradle and a door that wouldn't lock. It was coming from deeper in the woods. Abby grabbed my arm. That's not right. We found him near the old swing set. He was sitting on it, legs dangling, staring up at the trees. Dad stood a few feet away, arms crossed, face like stone. Why'd you follow me? Todd asked, not looking at us. Because you walked into the woods singing lullabies like a ghost, Abby snapped. He smiled. Still staring up. Did you know this place used to be a farm? Before Grandpa built the cabin? No one answered. Sometimes I wonder if the ground remembers what it grew before we came. If it holds it all underneath. Like layers of stories. Bad ones, mostly. His eyes drifted shut. It's loud down there. I stepped forward. Todd, let's go inside. He looked at me then, and for the first time all night, he didn't look angry. Or smug. Or even sad. He looked empty. And said, I think something's wrong with me. No one spoke. Not even Dad. The swing creaked slowly in the wind. I didn't know what to say. I'd waited so long for him to finally admit something, anything, and now that he had, it felt like holding glass that was already cracking in your hands. That night, we stayed at the cabin. None of us planned to. But no one wanted to drive. No one wanted to talk about what happened, either. We just slept in old rooms with crooked floors and drafty windows. Michelle and I shared a twin bed. She cried into my shoulder. I didn't sleep at all. At some point in the night, I woke up and heard footsteps upstairs. Heavy. Slow. Like someone pacing, but barefoot. I lay there listening, pulse thumping like a warning. I thought about getting up. But something in me said don't. So I didn't. And the next morning, the notebook was gone. When we woke up, Todd was gone again. No note. No sound. Just his folded blanket on the couch, like he never meant to stay. Mom acted like it was fine. He just needed space, she said, her smile brittle as winter glass. But I could tell, she was watching the trees through the window like they might bring him back. Or keep him. I walked around the cabin looking for that notebook. Every drawer. Every cupboard. Under the cushions. Nothing. It was like it had been absorbed into the wood overnight. Like the cabin didn't want us to have it anymore. On the drive home, Michelle said what I'd been thinking. That wasn't just a breakdown. I kept my eyes on the road. What do you mean? She hesitated. It felt like something had taken root in him. Something else. The way he looked at us. The way he kept talking about the house, remembering things. Her voice cracked. He sounded like he'd gone somewhere inside himself and couldn't find the door back. I wanted to argue. To say it was just trauma, stress, maybe a bad mix of meds and resentment. But I couldn't. Because that swing, him sitting there in the dark, singing with that eerie calm, that moment hadn't left me. It clung to me. And then things started going wrong. The first thing happened 3 days later. Jim called me in the middle of the night. I answered on the third ring, groggy. Did you see it? What? The email. I sat up. Jim, what are you talking about? He exhaled hard. Todd emailed everyone from your wedding guest list. Everyone. From your email. There's screenshots. I scrambled to my laptop. The email was short. Clinical. Cold. Subject, correction regarding wedding events. Hello everyone. There seems to have been a misunderstanding during the recent celebration. Todd did not, in fact, intend to propose during the father-daughter dance. The events that followed were staged by a third party and taken out of context. Please refrain from further speculation. Regards, my full name. I sat frozen. He made it sound like I framed him, I whispered. Jim grunted. No, he made it sound like he won. I checked my sent folder. Empty. But the message had my name, my email signature. Even the timestamp matched when Michelle and I had gone out to dinner and left our devices at home. How had he gotten in? Michelle was pacing by then. Do you think he still has access to your account? I changed the password. Twice. I stared at the screen. And that's when I noticed it. At the bottom of the email. In the white space. You could barely see it unless you highlighted everything. 3 tiny words, faded like a watermark. They believed me. I closed the laptop like it had bitten me. And just like that, the world began folding in on itself. People started acting differently. An old coworker who'd RSVP'd to the wedding stopped responding to my texts. Michelle's aunt, who'd cried during our vows, unfollowed both of us online. Jim said he overheard someone at work mutter that maybe Todd was right. The wedding, our wedding, had become a rumor. A shadow. And in every version, we were the villains. Michelle broke a wine glass the day her cousin accused her of setting Todd up for attention. She didn't say a word. Just swept the shards into the trash, then locked herself in the bathroom for an hour. And Todd? Silence. Radio silence. Except once. A voicemail. No words. Just 30 seconds of Todd laughing. Soft at first, then louder. Like something had crawled under his skin and was tickling from the inside. And in the background, barely audible, whined through trees. Like he was calling from the cabin. Michelle deleted the message. I dug it out of her recently deleted folder and saved it to a flash drive. I don't know why. Maybe because I started dreaming of him. He'd be standing in our kitchen. Always barefoot. Always with that notebook in his hand. He wouldn't speak. Just stare at me like he was waiting for me to remember something I never knew. And behind him, just past the window, the trees from the cabin. Watching. One morning, I woke up with his voice still echoing in my head, "You should have just let me propose." Another email showed up the next week. This one came from Michelle's account. Subject, apology. To Todd. I want to make things right. I never meant for it to go this far. Please come by and talk. You deserve that much. It was sent at 3:14 a.m. Michelle was asleep beside me the entire night. I showed her the message. She didn't speak. Just clutched her chest like she was trying to hold something inside from leaking out. We changed every password we had. Two-factor everything. Bought a new router. Scanned our phones. Still, a week later, Jim got an envelope in the mail. No stamp. No return address. Just a photo. A candid shot of him whispering to me during the reception, seconds before I confronted Todd about the ring box. Written on the back, in blocky Sharpie. Always recording. Always listening. That's when Jim stopped answering his phone. He moved in with his girlfriend 2 towns over, said he needed distance. I didn't blame him. But I couldn't shake the feeling that something else was going on. Because the thing is, Todd was clever. Manipulative. Even cool. But he wasn't technically skilled. He didn't crack accounts. He didn't spook emails. And yet, he was everywhere. So I did the one thing I promised myself I wouldn't. I went back to the cabin. Alone. I didn't tell Michelle. Didn't tell Jen. Not even Abby. If I was being honest, I didn't want anyone talking me out of it. I needed to see it. The place where he changed. Or broke. Or whatever happened to him. It was late afternoon when I pulled up. The cabin looked exactly the same. Exactly. Same dead leaves in the driveway. Same crack in the screen door. Same bird feeder that had been crooked since 2009. But it felt different. Not abandoned. Not even lonely. It felt watched. The air was still. Stiff, like it had forgotten how to move. I left the car running longer than I meant to. Just staring at that warped front porch like it might open its mouth. Finally, I stepped inside. And immediately, it hit me. That smell. It wasn't rot. Or mold. Or dust. It was something warm, almost sweet. Like cedar and burnt sugar and something coppery underneath. The kind of scent that wraps around your brain and makes your heart race before your mind catches up. I moved room by room. Nothing obvious had changed. The couch where Todd slept. The table where he dropped that cursed notebook. The fridge humming its old hum like it hadn't skipped a beat. But the quiet was wrong. It wasn't empty quiet. It was listening. I checked the upstairs. Nothing. Basement, locked. As always. Grandpa's old rusted key still hung on the nail, untouched. But I didn't go down. I couldn't. Instead, I went to the back porch. Where the trees were. And there it was. The swing. Still moving. Just slightly. Like it had stopped a few seconds before I opened the door. I stared at it for a long time. That's when I saw something on the seat. I walked toward it, slow, like something in me knew better. But I went anyway. That's the problem with obsession. It makes your feet forget what your brain screams. The notebook. The same cracked leather cover. The same rubber band. But when I picked it up, the leather felt warmer than it should have. Like someone had just been holding it. My hands shook. I opened to the first page. No names. No dates. Just a line, scrawled in Todd's uneven handwriting. If they never let you speak, write in the walls instead. I turned the page. Blank. Next one. Blank. Dozens of them. I started flipping faster. All empty. Until the last. The very last page had something pressed into it. A photograph. An old one. Black and white, slightly warped. At first I thought it was of the cabin. But no. It was the foundation. Mid-construction. Men in suspenders standing around poured concrete, smoking, laughing. Except. In the far corner. Barely visible. A child. Alone. In the trees. Watching. It wasn't Todd. Wasn't anyone I knew. And something about the kid's face, it was smeared. Not by time. But as if someone had scratched it away deliberately. Like the image itself had rejected it. My ears rang suddenly. High, metallic. Piercing. I dropped the notebook. The wind kicked up, then the swing creaked again. Only this time, the creak matched the pitch of the ringing. Like it was echoing inside me. I backed away. Fast. My pulse slamming against my ribs like fists on a locked door. I didn't stop to shut the door behind me. I didn't check the basement. I didn't even look in the rearview mirror until I was 5 miles out, convinced something was riding behind me, pressed up against the back seat. When I finally got home, Michelle knew. She didn't say anything, but I saw it in her eyes the second she looked at me. What did you see? She asked quietly. I handed her the notebook. But when she opened it, it was blank. Completely blank. No quote. No photo. Just hundreds of empty, yellowing pages. She looked at me like I'd lost it. And for a second, I thought maybe I had. Maybe the stress had finally cracked me wide open. Maybe Todd had infected my brain like a virus. Turned memory into fiction. But that night, when I took off my shirt to shower, I saw something. A smear of black ink across my ribs. Faint. Like graphite rubbed into skin. A line, nearly vanished. Right in the walls instead. It wasn't just in the book anymore. I didn't sleep. Not really. Just drifted in and out while the words on my skin pulsed like something alive beneath the surface. Michelle touched the mark once while I dozed. I flinched so hard I nearly elbowed her. She didn't ask again. The next morning, I took a photo of it in the bathroom mirror. 3 shots. Just to be sure it was there. When I looked at them later, the writing was gone. Not just faint, erased. The skin smooth. Pale. Clean. But I could still feel it. Like an itch inside my bones. That day, something shifted in the house. It was subtle at first. The kitchen clock was wrong by 4 minutes. Then the hallway light flickered, not on and off, but brighter and dimmer, like it was breathing. Then I got a call from Jim. He didn't speak at first. Just silence. Jim? I said, heart racing. I'm being followed, he whispered. What? By who? I don't know. Not people. Not really. But it's like, they know I saw what we did to Todd. They know I helped. His voice was cracking now. Not from fear. From guilt. I've been having dreams, he said, voice thin. Of the swing. Of the house. But I'm on it. And someone's watching from the trees. I wake up crying, man. crying. I tried to calm him down. Told him we were just unraveling. That Todd had gotten in our heads. He laughed, sharp, dry. He didn't get in. We let him in. And now? He trailed off. Then? I think he's still there. At the cabin. The call dropped. I tried calling back. Voicemail. Just static. I didn't tell Michelle. Not about Jim. Not about the new scratch on my back that looked like it had been written in fingernails. A shape I couldn't read in the mirror. The next day, the lights in the living room turned on by themselves. Michelle asked if I was playing a joke. She was half laughing when she said it. But her eyes weren't. That night, I found the notebook in my nightstand. I didn't put it there. Michelle swore she hadn't touched it. It was open to the middle now. And a new page had writing. Only 4 words, messy and desperate, carved into the paper so deeply it had bled through 5 sheets behind it. I never left here. That's when I realized something terrible. The notebook wasn't a diary. It was a door. And every time I opened it, it opened something in return. I started hearing sounds. Not loud ones. Soft, internal ones. Whispers when I passed mirrors. A faint creaking when no one was moving. The sound of breathing in the attic even though we'd never been up there. One night, I found Michelle standing in the hallway. Completely still. Staring at the guest room. The door was open a crack. I whispered, "What are you doing?" She didn't answer. I stepped closer. Her mouth was moving, but no sound was coming out. Like she was whispering in reverse. I took her by the shoulders and gently turned her away. Her eyes didn't blink. I said her name. 3 times. Then she gasped, like someone had just dropped her back into her body. She started to cry. Said she'd heard someone calling her from inside the guest room. Said it sounded like my voice. But I hadn't said anything. And neither of us had stepped into that room in weeks. When we finally opened the door the next morning, together, everything inside had been rearranged. The bed moved. The closet doors wide open. And on the wall, something had been scratched faintly into the paint behind the dresser. Same words. Over and over. "You should have let me propose." I thought about calling Abby. But something in me recoiled. It wasn't shame. Or fear. It was something deeper. Like if I pulled someone else into this, it would spread. The notebook went missing again 2 days later. This time, we didn't look for it. We both pretended that was the end. Until I went to the fridge one night, half asleep, and saw it sitting on the top shelf. Wrapped in plastic. Cold to the touch. And inside, on the newest page, was a photo of me. Standing in the kitchen. Holding the notebook. Only, I hadn't taken it. Michelle hadn't taken it. And behind me, in the reflection of the oven door. Someone else. Todd? I turned, heart hammering. The room was empty. But the floorboards beneath my feet felt warm. Like something had just stepped away. I started avoiding mirrors. There was a moment, short, maybe 2 seconds, when my reflection didn't move with me. Like it was waiting to see what I'd do. Michelle started sleeping in the guest room. She said it was just temporary. Said I was restless. Said I mumbled names in my sleep, some of them weren't hers. Said I kept reaching out in the dark, like I was trying to hand something to someone who wasn't there. She asked if I remembered what I said when I reached. I told her no. She said, "You kept whispering, this time, let me be first." And I swear something inside me smiled when she said it. Not me. Not in my heart or face, but deeper. Somewhere down past thought. That night I slept in the living room, alone. Around 2 a.m., the television turned on. Just static. No volume. I sat up, pulse in my throat, and reached for the remote, only to find it already in my hand. I don't remember picking it up. The static had a rhythm. Almost a pattern. Like breathing again. Or a whispering crowd. I turned the volume up. Just enough. And behind the fuzz, I heard it. He ruined me first. I shut it off and threw the remote across the room. The next morning, Jim's wife called. Not Jim. Her. She was crying, barely forming words. Said Jim had been missing for 36 hours. Said the last thing he'd done before leaving was sit in their garage with all the lights off, whispering something into a corner. Something about being the witness. She asked if I knew what that meant. I said no. I said I hadn't seen him. And then I hung up. I went to the basement. For the first time in over a year. It wasn't because I wanted to. It was like my feet knew something was down there. The key was still hanging by the door. But it was polished now. Like someone had been using it. I unlocked the door, and immediately, I felt colder. Like whatever was down there wasn't dead, but waiting. The stairs creaked louder than I remembered. The air had that same burnt sugar and metal smell from the cabin. And the notebook was sitting on the bottom step. Open. With 3 words written in thick, angry pen. Come. Sit. Remember. I picked it up. Something moved in the dark corner of the room. I told myself it was just nerves. Just a draft. But I knew better. This was different. This was familiar. And that's when I saw it. On the wall, behind the water heater, scratched and faint, jagged writing. Before your wedding, there was mine. I dropped the notebook and ran up the stairs 2 at a time, slammed the door, locked it, and didn't go back down. But it didn't matter anymore. The house remembered. Michelle barely spoke to me that day. She was pale. Distant. Like she was mourning something. When I finally asked, she looked me dead in the eyes and said, "You're not who I married anymore." And the worst part? She was right. Something had shifted. Not broken. Just bent. Like the shape of me had started changing under the surface. That night, I opened the closet in our bedroom to grab a hoodie. The light inside was on. It shouldn't have been. We didn't have a light in that closet. But it was glowing, faint and sickly yellow, like from an old filament bulb. And hanging in the center, on a hook that had never been there before, was a tuxedo. Not mine. Todd's. I knew it because the inside pocket still had that ridiculous silver pen he always carried. The one he used to write Lucy over and over during our rehearsal dinner, like a schoolboy scribbling his crush's name. But the tux was wet. Dripping, as if it had just come out of a lake. When I stepped back, the closet light flickered, then shut off. And I swear, as the light died, I saw someone in the tux looking back at me. Not standing. Hanging. The door slammed shut. I didn't sleep. I barely breathed. And when I went to the bathroom in the morning, I found a small photo taped to the mirror. It was from our wedding. Me and Michelle dancing. Only this time, in the background, where no one had stood before. Todd. Grinning. Holding the ring. By then, every room in the house felt like it was breathing behind my back. Not fast. Not loud. Just there, constant. Like someone was holding their breath, waiting for the right moment to exhale. Michelle barely looked at me anymore. She had started writing in a notebook of her own. I caught her one night on the couch, scribbling frantically. When she noticed me watching, she closed it slowly and smiled. Not warmly. Not like her. Just, deliberately. I'm keeping track, she said. Of what? She shrugged. Who you are. Who you were. Who you're becoming. I didn't ask what that meant. I was afraid I'd agree. Later that night, I opened her notebook while she was asleep. Every page was blank. Except the very last one. Just one sentence. He is not your brother anymore. That was the same night I got a text from an unknown number. No words. Just a photo. Me. Standing outside my house. Smiling. I was inside. I hadn't moved. And yet, there I was, outside. The timestamp matched the exact minute I was sitting at the kitchen table, alone. I ran to the window. No one. Street empty. Yard still. But the porch light was flickering, like it had just been turned off and on. I tried to call Jim again. Still gone. His number gave a generic message: this user is no longer available. I didn't know what that meant. Or maybe I did. And didn't want to admit it. Michelle began locking her bedroom door. No explanation. One night, I heard her talking to someone through it. Whispering. When I knocked, the talking stopped immediately. She opened it 2 minutes later. Calm. Neutral. Her mouth tight like a zipper that had just sealed something awful inside. I'm worried about you, she said. I'm worried about us, I told her. She nodded. Me too. Then she gently closed the door again. I stood there another 10 minutes, listening to nothing. Not even breathing. Just silence. Thick as syrup. Then I turned and saw something at the end of the hall. A photo frame face down on the floor. One of our wedding pictures. I picked it up. The glass was cracked. Not broken, cracked. A spiderweb fracture right over my face. And someone had written over the picture in red marker. You did this. Not you're to blame. Not you hurt me. Just, you did this. I should have thrown it away. Instead, I put it back. Why? I don't know. Maybe because it felt like a warning. Maybe because it felt like permission. The next day I found mud on the kitchen floor. Just a few footprints. Big. Heavy. Like boots. Leading to the guest room. The same room Michelle hadn't entered in weeks. The door was shut again. I opened it slowly. And the entire room had been rearranged into a copy of our wedding venue. No chairs, just that arch. The one we stood beneath. And beneath it, a photo tacked to the wall. Lucy. Crying. Not the rehearsal dinner. Not the engagement. But right after Todd's ruined proposal. She was in her dress. Tears blackened with mascara. And on the back, a note scrawled in Todd's sharp, looping script. She was my yes. You took that. My mouth went dry. I dropped the photo. When I turned around, the lights in the hallway were out. All of them. Pitch black. But there were footsteps. Not fast. Just approaching. Measured. One after another. Coming closer. Coming for me. I didn't move. I couldn't. Those footsteps weren't just noise. They were deliberate. Like someone walking down a memory they'd rehearsed too many times. They stopped just before the doorframe. Right on the other side. And for maybe 5 seconds, the air between me and whatever stood there didn't feel like air. It felt like water, heavy, pressing in, carrying something bloated and slow beneath the surface. I whispered, Michelle? Silence. Then. A knock. Once. Sharp. And then, he was supposed to ask her. You made sure he couldn't. It wasn't Michelle's voice. It wasn't Todd's either. It sounded like a recording that had been played too many times. Fuzzy, layered with static. Wrong. I didn't open the door. I backed away slowly, watching the space beneath the door for shadows, for movement, for breath. But nothing. Just cold silence. And then a smell hit me. Sweet. Almost like rotting flowers. Lilies. Michelle hates lilies. I don't know how long I stayed in that room. At some point I must have fallen asleep sitting against the wall, Because when I woke up it was morning, and the door was wide open. Michelle was standing in the hallway, wearing the same dress she wore at our wedding. Her eyes were puffy, mascara streaked. I sat up fast. Michelle. She held up her hand. Quiet. Then she spoke. Did it make you feel powerful? My voice cracked. What? What you did to Todd? To Lucy? To all of us? I stood, suddenly freezing. What are you talking about? She stepped closer. Did it feel good? Watching it all fall apart? Watching her cry in the middle of my father's dance? I couldn't breathe. Michelle. I told you. I warned him. He knew. I knew, she said, voice low. I knew, and I still let you do it. Her voice didn't shake. That was the worst part. She wasn't emotional. She was resigned. Why are you wearing that dress? I asked. Her mouth quirked, like she didn't quite remember. Because it's the last thing I wore when I was sure you loved me. Then she reached into her pocket. Pulled out a ring. Not mine. Not hers. Todd's. Still smeared with dirt. Still soaking wet. I found it in the sink this morning. She dropped it on the floor between us. It made the softest ping against the tile. And I realized I'd stopped hearing her footsteps. She hadn't made a sound since I woke up. I looked down at the floor behind her. No footprints. The hallway was dusty. Undisturbed. But she was standing right there. Michelle, I whispered. She stepped forward and kissed me on the forehead. Cold. Mechanical. Like a goodbye. Then she walked past me, through the doorway, and into the guest room. And shut the door. I didn't follow. I couldn't. When I finally worked up the courage and pushed it open an hour later, the room was empty. No arch. No photo. No Michelle. Just her ring on the bed. I held it in my palm for 10 minutes before I realized something. It wasn't hers either. It was Lucy's. Engraved inside. Forever your yes, T. The lights in the room flickered. And from somewhere in the walls, I heard a wet knock. Slow. Twice. Then nothing. I couldn't avoid it anymore. The ring. The knocks. Michelle's disappearing act, vanishing without a fight, without tears, without even a slammed door. It all pointed to one place I hadn't dared revisit. Todd's phone. I still had it. Jim gave it to me after the wedding, the night we pulled the stunt. He'd borrowed it after the fake confrontation, figuring Todd would be too distracted to notice it was gone. I never turned it on. It had sat in my nightstand drawer ever since, half forgotten and gathering dust. But that drawer had started rattling at night. Not loud. Just the soft, arrhythmic vibration of something trying to be noticed. So I gave in. Charged it. Watched the black screen come to life. It unlocked with no passcode. The home screen was nothing unusual, just Lucy's face, glowing and wide-eyed in some blurry beach selfie. But the message icon had 14 unread texts. All from the same unsaved number. The first one was sent during our wedding. Don't. Then, 2 minutes later. Not here. Not like this. Then. Please. Todd. You promised. Each message got shorter. More desperate. Until the final one, sent during the father-daughter dance. He told me. I know everything. And then the text stopped. I checked the number. It wasn't Lucy's. It wasn't a number I recognized. I tried calling it. Disconnected. I checked the voicemails. There were 3. All from that number. The first was faint static, layered under the sound of waves, like someone walking along a shoreline, holding their phone just above the waterline. The second was clearer. Just breathing. Close to the mic. Then, one word. Not spoken. Exhaled. Undo. The third made me sit down. It was Lucy's voice. But wrong. Hollowed out. Like she was being recorded from inside a tunnel filled with water. She whispered. It was never about you. But you made it yours. He's with me now. And you don't get to have his ending. The message ended with something sharp, like a scream clipped off before it could bloom. My hands were shaking. I checked the phone's photos. Just one new one. Dated 2 days ago. I hadn't touched the phone in weeks. It was a photo of my backyard. Nighttime. Blurred. And in the far corner of the frame, a shape. Tall. Shoulders hunched. Face not visible. But the shirt was unmistakable. Todd's rehearsal dinner shirt. The one he bled on after Lucy stormed out and pushed past him, cutting his arm on the door frame. He kept that shirt. Claimed it was a reminder. Of what? Regret? Ownership? I don't know. But there it was. Standing at the edge of my lawn. Watching the house. Watching me. And as I stared at the photo, the image began to shake, as if the file itself was unstable. Then my own phone buzzed. New text. From Michelle. Just 2 words. Check the closet. I froze. Which one? The guest room? Ours? The hallway coat closet? I didn't ask. I knew which one. The hallway. The one where Todd's soaked tux had appeared. Where I saw, just for a blink, someone hanging. My feet moved before my brain caught up. When I reached the closet, I opened the door slowly. Nothing. Just coats. Boxes. Old shoes. But the light was on again. That light that didn't exist. And on the top shelf, folded neatly, was my wedding suit. Not Michelle's dress. Not Todd's tux. Mine. But stitched into the collar, letters that weren't there before. Not initials. A phrase. Tiny red thread. He said yes first. The scratching had started weeks ago. Low. Infrequent. Easy to explain away as pipes or raccoons or something living but harmless. But after the closet, after that message stitched into my collar like a warning burned into skin, I stopped pretending it was just noise. It was movement. And it was getting closer. Every night around 2:13 a.m., it would start. Just behind the bedroom wall. Just beneath the floorboards. Always right beneath me. Michelle was gone. Not left for good gone. Just absent. No goodbye. No note. Her car was still in the driveway. Her toothbrush still wet that first morning. But her wedding ring? Gone from her finger on every framed photo in the house. The images had changed. Or maybe they hadn't. Maybe I was only now noticing what was always true. So I listened. I stayed up one night, sitting on the floor, ear pressed to the wooden boards like a kid trying to hear the ocean in a conch shell. It came at 2:14 that night. A dragging sound. Not scraping. Not scratching. Dragging. Like something long and heavy was pulling itself across a crawlspace, body catching on stone and root. And behind it? A wet thumb. Rhythmic. 1 2, pause, 1 2. I whispered into the floor. Where are you? And the sound stopped. Right beneath me. Like it had been waiting for acknowledgement. Like it wanted to know it had an audience. I didn't sleep. I waited until morning and pulled open the hatch to the crawlspace behind the house. I hadn't been down there in years. Even the air smelled different, dense, earthy, soaked in mildew and something metallic. I crawled in. Flashlight in one hand. Wedding ring in the other. Not hers. Mine. I didn't know why I brought it. Maybe to leave it behind. Maybe as a bribe. The space was too low to stand. Dirt floor. Spiderwebs. The old ductwork curling like silver veins across the ceiling. Then I saw it. A patch of dirt that had clearly been disturbed. Uneven. Mounded. Fresh. I moved closer. Light trembling. And something breathed. From under the ground. A slow, hot, shuddering inhale. I don't remember grabbing the shovel. Maybe I brought it instinctively. Maybe it was already there, waiting for me. I started to dig. Each scoop felt like cutting into flesh. The smell came first. Not death. Memory. Rain. Sea salt. Lilies. Lucy's perfume. I kept digging until metal hit metal. Something flat. A box. No, a chest. Locked. But scratched into the surface, barely legible through the rust and dirt, was one word. Yes. I forced it open with the end of the shovel. Inside. Todd's tux. Soaked. Hardened with dried blood. A Polaroid photo of Lucy holding a pregnancy test. Crying. Smiling. And a phone. Not his. Hers. I turned it on. Battery at 1%. One video. Timestamp the night of the wedding. I hit play. The footage was shaky, unfocused. Lucy was facing the camera. Alone. Eyes wide. Breathing fast. Tell him, a voice said behind the camera. Lucy swallowed. He said if I didn't, if I told anyone, he'd ruin me. Who? The voice asked. And Lucy's lip trembled. She whispered. Jim. The video ended. The phone died. My flashlight flickered. And from behind me, in the dark, I heard someone say, softly, "You opened the wrong box." I turned. Fast. The flashlight swung across the low ceiling of the crawlspace, catching nothing but dirt and dust motes suspended in thick, unmoving air. But I heard it. A whisper, shaped like breath. "You opened the wrong box." The voice had weight to it, like it had been rehearsed, repeated. And it wasn't Todd's. It was Jim's. I didn't climb out of that crawlspace. I ran. I don't know how I didn't smack my skull on one of the beams, but I burst back into daylight like I was coming up from underwater, hands shaking, the dead phone still clutched in my fist. I texted Jim. "Where are you?" No reply. I tried calling. Straight to voicemail. Then I remembered. He still had the backup copies. He always had backup copies. That's who Jim was, the guy who saved things just in case. Wedding footage. Phone backups. Messages. Photos. Everything. The guy who borrowed Todd's phone and said, "Don't worry, I wiped anything compromising." The guy who helped me plan the revenge. The guy who found the jewelry store receipt. But never showed it to me. Only told me what it said. I drove to his place. Didn't knock. Didn't call. His front door was unlocked. Inside, it looked the same as always, beer bottles on the counter, guitar on the couch, blinds half drawn like sunlight with something to be negotiated with. But the basement door was open. Light on. And at the bottom of the stairs, sitting on the floor with his back to the wall, was Jim. Smiling. Not the warm kind. Not the real kind. His wedding invite to my ceremony was lying on the floor beside him, torn, folded into the shape of a ring. "Hey, man," he said, as if we were catching up over drinks. "What the hell did you do?" I asked. He sighed, long and slow. "You're asking the wrong question." I stared at him. "Then what's the right one?" He looked up at me, eyes empty. Dead. Like they'd been off long before I ever noticed. "Why did I help you ruin your brother's life, when I knew the truth the whole time?" I swallowed. He continued, voice low. "You didn't plan it." "Not really. You asked for chaos, and I gave it to you. Because that's what you wanted, right? Someone to say it was justified. I took a step back. He didn't move. Just smiled harder. I watched him rehearse the proposal, Todd. Out behind the bar after your rehearsal dinner. He wasn't gonna do it during the dance. He had a plan. He was gonna wait till the after party. Make it quiet. Intimate. Lucy's idea. My stomach turned. Then why? I told you he planned to crash the dance, Jim said. I planted the receipt in his pocket. You ever wonder why it was sticking out so conveniently? I sat down on the bottom step. He kept going. I needed you angry. I needed you sharp. You were always too restrained. But that night? That night you let the thing underneath out. And man, it was beautiful. I looked at him. And for the first time since all this started, I felt sick. Not scared. Not haunted. Just sick. You ruined him, I whispered. Jim leaned in. You did. I just gave you permission. I looked around his basement. Stacks of drives. Labeled. Organized. One shelf read. The wedding, raw cuts. Another. Family, incidents. I stood. Walked to the shelves. Pulled down one of the drives. Plugged it into the TV. It loaded a video immediately. Todd. Crying. In a bathroom stall. Same suit. Same night. Recording himself in the mirror. I didn't do it. I didn't. I swear to God. Lucy, please. He covered his face. Breathed heavy. Then the camera swung. And there was Jim. Standing behind him. Silent. Smiling. The screen froze. I turned to look at the real Jim. But he was gone. No footsteps. No door. No sound. Just that ring he made from my wedding invite. Still sitting where he had been. And beneath it, written in ink on the floorboards. Say yes again. I stood frozen at the edge of that basement, hand trembling over the stack of drives. And then I saw it. One wasn't labeled with tape or stickers like the others. It was etched. Carved right into the plastic casing with something sharp. Do not watch. No code name. No euphemism. Just that direct warning, pressed into the black plastic like someone trying to carve regret into a machine. I shouldn't have plugged it in. I knew I shouldn't. But the truth has this gravitational pull. The more it hides, the more it drags you toward it. So I did. The screen flickered. And there it was. A wide-angle video feed of our wedding ceremony, shot from a corner angle, like security footage. No music. No laughter. Just flat ambient sound. Wind. Chairs shifting. Shoes scraping on wood. And then, Jim's voice. Low. Close to the mic. Like he was behind the camera. Let's see if he notices. Then, rustling. A figure, me, walked past on the screen, not knowing I was being followed. Jim zoomed in. On Todd. Sitting off to the side, staring down at a ring box in his lap. He looked nervous. Emotional. Like someone who might actually be trying not to ruin anything. Then, Jim stepped into the frame. He leaned down. Whispered something in Todd's ear. You couldn't hear it. But the effect? Immediate. Todd's whole face changed. His hand clutched the box tighter. He stood up. Looked around like something inside him had just snapped loose. I remembered that moment. That was when he crossed the room. Interrupted the dance. Dropped to one knee. I thought it was selfishness. I thought it was sabotage. But now? Now I saw the seed. The push. Jim gave it to him. He engineered it. And I gave him permission. Because all I needed was the excuse. The video kept rolling. Now it showed Lucy standing by the bar after storming off, talking to someone out of frame. Then the camera panned, and there he was again. Jim. No mask. No pretend. Just a cold, calculating man with a gentle hand on Lucy's back, whispering poison into her ear. Over and over again. Until she started crying. Until she grabbed her purse. Until she ran. I paused the video. My throat was dry. I sat there in that basement, breathing too fast, too loud, like something might hear me from inside the walls. And that's when I heard it again. The knock. From upstairs. Not loud. Just deliberate. 4 short raps. Then silence. I didn't move. I didn't want to move. But my phone buzzed. New text. Blocked number. You watched it. Good. Now ask yourself, why did Michelle leave? I stared. Then another text. Not because of Todd. Another. Because she knew what you were. I stood, legs unsteady, and climbed the stairs. Opened the front door. Nothing. Except. On the welcome mat. A red velvet box. Same one Todd used for the proposal. Only this time, inside, wasn't a ring. It was a flash drive. Labeled in Sharpie. Michelle, last words. I stood there for a long time. Drive in hand. Thumb rubbing over the Sharpie letters like they might smear, like the truth inside might rub off before I had to face it. Michelle's name. Last words. I went home. Didn't speak. Didn't think. Just walked back inside, shut every curtain, turned off every light except the lamp in the den, and plugged the drive into my laptop. One file. A video. Timestamped 3 weeks before the wedding. Before Todd's proposal. Before the reception. Before the so-called chaos. I clicked play. Michelle appeared on screen. She was sitting on the couch in our living room. Wearing the hoodie she always stole from me, legs pulled up under her like she was trying to shrink into herself. No makeup. Eyes tired. But not from crying. From knowing. She looked right at the camera. Right at me. And said, "If you're watching this, you found what Jim wanted you to find. Good. Now maybe you'll finally understand why I left, without leaving." She gave a smile, sad smile. Not bitter. Just hollow. You've always been good at blaming other people. Todd. Your parents. Even Abby. It made sense. They didn't protect you. They favored him. They made you small. And I know what that does to a person. I do. I saw it. She exhaled slowly. Hands twisting in her lap. But you didn't stop at being angry. You needed revenge. You needed someone to hurt. And when Jim offered it to you in a bow, you took it. You didn't ask questions. You didn't pause. You just said yes. My heart pounded. That night, when Todd proposed, I knew he hadn't planned it that way. I saw his face. I saw the panic. That wasn't triumph. That was someone pushed past their limit. And I saw your face, too. She looked down. You weren't hurt. You weren't betrayed. You were excited. Silence. Just the hum of the old AC unit in the background. Then she looked up again. That's when I knew you weren't trying to save us. You weren't trying to protect our day. You were trying to destroy his. Her voice broke, just slightly. And I couldn't stop you. Because if I did, I'd be choosing him over you. And that was a line I wasn't ready to cross. She swallowed hard. So I stayed quiet. Until I couldn't anymore. Then she held something up to the camera. A notebook. The pages flipped quickly. Receipts. Screenshots. Maps. One of them was a photo of Jim and me. From years ago. Another was Jim and her. Same bar. Same night. A week before our engagement. I didn't remember it. But she did. You don't realize this yet, but you didn't just say yes to Jim's idea. You said yes to becoming like him. And I couldn't stay married to someone like that. She leaned in. Eyes sharp now. No longer soft. You didn't marry me. You married your anger. And you kissed it at the altar like it was love. The screen went dark. The video ended. And in the silence that followed, I didn't feel haunted. I didn't feel cursed. I felt seen. Exposed. Like the story I'd been telling myself, about being the victim, about being justified, was suddenly in a language I couldn't even read anymore. Then my phone lit up again. Unknown number. Now do you get it? Another buzz. Check the back of the flash drive. I did. One more carving. Etched with the same sharp, exacting hand. Yes, or no? I turned it over. There was a tiny, red switch embedded on the side. One way said yes. The other, no. And something in me understood. This wasn't over. This wasn't about memory anymore. This was about decision. The switch was tiny. Barely a bump on the side of the flash drive. Like an afterthought. Like something not meant to be touched. But it was there. And someone carved it in for a reason. Yes. And oh. The question wasn't written in a sentence. It didn't need to be. It was felt. What do you choose now that you know? I flipped it. To yes. Nothing happened at first. No fanfare. No sudden click or hum. Just a silent laptop screen and the sick weight of my own heartbeat echoing in my ears. Then, the file folder blinked. Once. And a second video appeared. Untitled. No timestamp. Just a blank black thumbnail. I clicked it. The screen faded in. It was a room. Not familiar. Unfurnished. Just concrete walls, one bare window, and a folding table in the center. And sitting on that table was another flash drive. Same style. Same carving. Yes. And oh. A man walked into the frame. Not Jim. Me. Older. Thinner. Sharper around the eyes. Like life had scraped everything soft away. I watched myself on screen walk to the table, stare down at the new drive, then look into the camera. And say, "You chose yes again." He leaned in. Closer. As if the lens were a mirror. You don't get it yet. This isn't about Todd. It never was. The older me walked toward the camera, sat down in front of it. Spoke quietly. This is about pattern. About how you choose the same story over and over, even when you know how it ends. You burn everything down just to prove you're right about the people who hurt you. He raised one hand, slowly, and tapped his temple. That's the real trap. Not what Jim planned. Not what Michelle revealed. The trap is that you think you're different now. That seeing the truth is enough. Then he held something up. The wedding invite. Burned at the edges. Ink smeared. And right below it. A photo of Todd. Smiling. With Lucy. And their child. All three of them laughing. In some park I didn't recognize. Sun behind them, golden. I don't have that photo. I've never seen that photo. But older me did. He held it up like proof. Like an accusation. They healed. You didn't. Then he stood up. Walked out of frame. Silence. Until the camera zoomed, on its own, back to the drive on the table. And now the drive had something new on it. Carved fresh, jagged, deep. Try again? The video ended. I sat in that den, still. Breathing. Watching my own face vanish from the screen like fog clearing from glass. Then my phone buzzed. One message. No number. No name. Just. That was the second question. Third's coming. I dropped the phone. Looked around the room. Same couch. Same hoodie Michelle used to wear, still crumpled in the corner. But something was different now. The light felt wrong. Like it wasn't coming from the lamp. Like it was leaking in from somewhere else. From the screen? From the switch? Or from the question I hadn't figured out how to answer yet? Because this wasn't about revenge anymore. This was about someone, maybe everyone, testing me. Over and over. To see when I'd stop saying yes. I didn't sleep. Not because I was scared. That came later. At first, I just sat there, quiet, listening to the static hush of the screen long after the video ended, like it might start whispering again if I stared long enough. But it didn't. No more messages. No knocks. No texts. Just one thing left, the switch. And the question that was still there, waiting like a loaded silence. Try again? I reached for the drive. It was warm. Almost, pulsing. I flipped the switch to NO. The screen didn't blink this time. It flickered. Like old tape burning out. Then the file folder vanished. Replaced by a new one. Labeled. Question 3. Inside it, one file. A name I hadn't seen in years. Abby_full_recording.mob. My breath caught. Abby and I hadn't really spoken since the wedding fallout. She was the only one who said I'd gone too far. She didn't yell. She didn't block me. She just stopped replying. But this? This felt like her reply. I clicked play. The video opened on a room I recognized immediately. Dad's study. The old office with green carpet and one sun-bleached bookshelf that always smelled like lemon oil and regret. Abby sat in the office chair. Holding a camcorder. No date stamp. No angle changes. Just her. She looked wrecked. Eyes puffy. Like she'd been crying for hours but wouldn't give the camera the satisfaction. Then she said, "They always let him ruin everything." Her voice cracked. Not angry. Tired. My graduation? He faked a seizure to get out of a speeding ticket that morning. Mom spent the whole dinner holding his hand like he was the victim. She sniffed, wiped her nose. And you let that poison calcify. You think you're immune to it, but you're just a different kind of addict. Not to the attention, to the revenge. She stood up, started pacing. Hands flying like they always did when she was telling the truth faster than she could edit it. You didn't ruin Todd's proposal because you were hurt. You did it because you needed a win. Because every time they picked him, a little part of you said, one day, I'll take it all back. She turned to face the camera. Eyes sharp. Well, you did. A beat. How's it feel? The screen cut to static. For 3 seconds. Then came the fourth file. No name. Just a single icon. A folder within a folder. Inside it? A blank document. White. Until words started typing themselves. One line. Then another. Revenge isn't just a choice. It's a habit. Then, break it. A blinking cursor. Then the final line. Or someone else will. My phone buzzed. No number. No name. Just. Last one's not a question. Then. It's a location. A set of coordinates dropped in. And I knew, with a dread that spread like oil in my gut, that the test hadn't been about Todd. Not Michelle. Not even Jim. It was about whether I'd follow the story all the way down. Even when I knew the bottom might not be made of anything solid. The coordinates led me to a storage facility. One of those low, anonymous rows of corrugated metal doors just outside town, where the lighting's always bad and nothing has a name, only numbers. Unit 207. I stood outside it for almost 10 minutes, key in hand. Who gave me the key? I don't remember. Maybe it was in my pocket. Maybe it had always been. The air felt off. Heavy with that kind of quiet you only get before a thunderstorm or right after someone says something they can't take back. I unlocked the door. Rolled it open. And froze. Inside. Nothing. Almost. Just a table. And on it? Every letter I had ever written but never sent. Every half-started journal, every angry email saved to drafts. Even the ones I deleted. All printed out. Stacked neatly. Labeled. First lies. And next to it, another stack. Photographs. Me. As a kid. A teen. A groom. But every picture was slightly wrong. Slightly off. In one, my smile didn't reach my eyes. In another, Abby was cropped out. In another, Michelle wasn't looking at me at all, she was turned, watching someone out of frame with a tight, unreadable expression. And beneath that pile was a handwritten note. Short. Blocky. The same sharp lettering from the flash drive. This is what you remember. Now look. Below it, one last photo. A dinner table. Thanksgiving. 10 years ago. I recognized it immediately. Except this time? Todd was missing. Not just not there. Erased. The space where he should have been, the chair, the plate, the shadow, was gone. Like he'd never existed. And everyone else? Still laughing. Still talking. Still whole. I stumbled back. Hands shaking. Because I remembered that dinner. He was there. Wasn't he? He made that terrible cranberry joke. Mom rolled her eyes. Abby threw a biscuit at him. That was real. Wasn't it? I checked the back of the photo. 3 letters, inked deep. No. Then a voice behind me said. You're getting close now. I turned. No one. Just the shadow of the open door stretched too long across the concrete. My phone buzzed. A voicemail. From my number. I hit play. You think this is about memory? It's not. It's about selection. Which story do you keep? Which version do you keep alive? That's the real revenge. Another buzz. A message this time. Last room. You know where. And I did. Even before I saw the second set of coordinates. Even before I mapped the route. Because the one door I hadn't opened yet was back at my parents' house. The basement. The one we never touched. The one Dad always kept locked. I didn't drive to my parents' house. I returned there. That's how it felt, like I was retracing steps someone else had already walked, like each corner was waiting for me instead of the other way around. The driveway was empty. No lights on. No cars. Just the porch lamp flickering like it always had. Even that hadn't changed. I let myself in with the old spare key under the frog-shaped planter. Every room upstairs was untouched. Too clean. Like a model home. Like a memory put on display and left to fade behind glass. But the basement door? Wide open. And the light was on. I stood there, just above the top stair, hand on the railing that had always been too loose, looking down at the steps that creaked on purpose. I could still hear Dad saying, "Don't sneak snacks down there, I'll hear every step." But tonight, there was no voice. No Dad. Just the quiet hum of something alive. Not living. Alive. The smell hit halfway down. Not rot. Not mildew. Paper. Old, warm paper. Like a library left in the heat too long. And something metallic under it. Faint. Bitter. When I reached the bottom step, I saw it. The wall was gone. That whole far wall, the one we thought just led into foundation, was gone. Knocked through. And beyond it? A corridor. Unfinished. Earth and wire. Bracing beams and hanging bulbs strung on cords like a mine shaft built in a hurry by someone who didn't care about collapse. At the end of that tunnel, a door. Not wood. Not steel. But mirror. Polished, seamless, cold. I walked to it. No handle. No hinges. Just a smear across the center, where someone, or something, had touched it over and over again. And there, etched faintly into the surface, were the words. Final recording. The mirror shimmered. Not with light. With movement. And then I saw myself. But not as I am now. Younger. Around 16. Sitting in a chair. Nervous. Biting my nails. A voice off-screen asked, "What do you remember about Todd?" And I, my 16-year-old self, said, "Sometimes I think he didn't come home from the hospital." The voice asked, "Then who did?" I couldn't breathe. The image shifted. Now it was Todd, same age. Same chair. But the Todd in the mirror wasn't the one I knew. Not really. His eyes were too still. His smile didn't move the rest of his face. And when he was asked about me, he said, "He's the one they forgot to correct." The mirror began to ripple. Words appeared again. This time not etched. Burned in light. The story isn't what happened. It's what you believed long enough to make true. And then, finally. Ready? Underneath it. 2 words. Yes. And oh. And my reflection, my real one, was now part of it. I could see myself standing in the glass, becoming part of the question. Because this wasn't about what Todd had done. Or what I had done to Todd. It was about how the story kept happening, every generation, every memory. It was about who wrote the first version. I don't remember touching the mirror. But I must have. Because I was through it. The shift wasn't dramatic, no noise, no swirl of light. Just a blink. 1 second I was staring at myself, and the next I was behind my own reflection, in a room that looked like nothing and everything all at once. It wasn't dark. But it felt dark. The way grief does. Or guilt. A sort of weighted absence that presses against your skin and makes sound feel thinner. And in the center of it, a chair. Just one. Facing a wall of screens. Each screen played a loop. Mom brushing Todd's hair back in the hospital. Abby staring down at her ruined baby shower cake. Michelle blinking rapidly during her father-daughter dance, holding back the storm behind her smile. And me, watching it all. Every scene. From the edges. Always just outside the frame. Until the last screen. That one showed me now. Sitting. Watching. And then, he stepped into view. Todd. But not my brother. Not exactly. This Todd had my eyes. My posture. My hesitation. Like someone had rebuilt him from pieces of my unfinished memories. He looked at me and said, softly, "You still don't get it." I swallowed. Get what? He gestured around the room. None of this happened to you. You happened to it. That landed like a punch I wasn't ready for. I said nothing. He kept going. You weren't the victim. You weren't the hero. You were the narrator. I stared at him. So what, this was all fake? He smiled. Not unkindly. Not smug. Just tired. It was real enough to ruin things, wasn't it? The screens flickered. My wedding. Todd on one knee. Lucy's hand covering her mouth, not in joy, but in confusion. The guests all frozen mid-turn, caught between a toast and a train wreck. You wrote a story where you were wronged, he said. And so you had to make it true. I shook my head. He really proposed. That really happened. Yes, he nodded. Because you needed it to. The lights in the room dimmed. Only one screen remained. Abby. Tears in her eyes. That recording from the flash drive. You let the revenge write you. The fake Todd sat across from me. You passed every test. Failed every question. Because you never stopped to ask who was setting them. He leaned in. So now I will. The final prompt appeared, floating in the air between us like breath on glass. Do you want to start over? Yes. And oh. My hands didn't move. But my throat did. What happens if I say no? He smiled. And for the first time, I recognized that smile. Not Todd's. Mine. Then the story ends. I looked down. Everything that led me here, the receipts, the proposal, the fake mistress, the voicemail, the photos, Abby's face, Lucy's tears, it all passed through me like echoes underwater. And if I say yes? He stood up. Behind him, the mirror reappeared. But this time it didn't reflect me. It showed an empty house. A wedding. A quiet life where nothing extravagant ever happened. Where Todd never proposed. Where I never planned the revenge. Where I was just a guy who loved Michelle, had issues with his brother, and maybe, just maybe, was ready to stop letting his pain narrate the whole world. He said. Then you remember it differently. I stood. Paused. And whispered the word. Yes. The screen blinked. The lights faded. And then? Nothing. No epilogue. No twist. Just silence. But I think that's how you know it's real. Because stories end loud. But life? Life gets quiet when it starts to heal.